Season 1, Episode 5 of The Wire, The Pager.
Yep, The Pager.
Any overall thoughts before we get into the...
Before we get into it, there's two scenes I have highlighted in my notes that I thought what you want to call my favorite scenes of the episode, or like one of the more telling scenes of the episode. So once we get to them, I'll make note of that.
Okay.
But
so
yeah,
this
one of them is D'Angelo on the date, and the other is the McNulty and Prez conversation. But
okay. So this is an episode following up on last week, which at the end we kind of found out. We were told that Daniels is dirty.
Yeah.
And we didn't really get a follow-up to that in this episode.
You know what? You mentioning that, man, I hadn't even thought of that this whole time. I completely forgot about that because, the gap between episodes, but also just his involvement in this episode. And, you men think he's dirty.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess this episode was a lot of back and forth of just a few situations. We got a lot of Herc and Carver with Bodie this episode. We got a lot of
McNulty putting together his IKEA set. Those were I noticed there was these little mini stories they were telling within the larger story this week,
and a lot of Omar.
Yeah.
So the pager is the name of the episode, obviously named after the pager of D'Angelo Barksdale, which last we saw they were working on the affidavit to get up and running on a tap on that and the payphone in the pit. So
they've successfully tapped both. Is that correct? They have a feed coming in of all the numbers that are ingoing and coming and outgoing.
Yeah, I think it's called pen register. Okay. When you're able to record the numbers that are dialed. They're not tapping the phone. They're just able to know what numbers are being dialed in and out of that pager, or out of the pay phone. Sorry.
Yeah, that's an important distinction. So thank you for clarifying, because right now all they can see is numbers and they can't hear any conversations.
Right. And of course with a pager, and that's part of a discipline that Freeman talked about when they're like, what's with these pagers? And it's a discipline. You can't tap a pager. And so they have to walk to these payphones in their drug areas. So we get the first scene, of course, who's on the phone, Avon with his girlfriend in someone's house. And they mentioned this before in his background that Avon kind of goes from girlfriend to girlfriend, staying with them. And so this is what he's doing. He's with a girl, phone rings. I guess it's established that he pays the bills for the girlfriend because he gets paranoid about the phone ringing. It's a hang up. He's looking out the window. Weebay's out there. He's very paranoid, it seems. The girlfriend says that he doesn't even talk. He's never there, never talks on the phone anyway. So why is he so paranoid? Weebay has to do a little loop around the neighborhood, around the block, to make sure that these kids.
These kids with the lacrosse gear, which I felt the moment of tension there because Omar's kind of check them out, make sure they're not spying on us or whatever it is. And, Avon, sorry, not Omar. Yeah, Avon. And then, but you see Weebay pull out his gun. So, it's a little tense, at least from my perspective. So.
Yeah. So he just does a quick little drive around, I guess. I don't want to say drive by.
Yeah, I think you got to reverse. It's kind of cool.
You're right. And checks out these kids. There's nothing there. Pulls back up to the block, lets Avon in, and Avon's real paranoid. And Weebay's a little bit, I guess, annoyed that he's paranoid. And Avon checks him a little bit and says, I don't have any enemies. No one's out to get me.
And Weebay kind of brushes him off. He's like, nah, we're all right. He kind of doesn't see it. So.
Yeah. And so then we go.
Mirrors, before we move on, do you see any parallels between that relationship, Weebay and Avon, and the relationship between D and Bodie? Do you see any kind of parallels there? At least in the way they challenge each other's authority.
I can see that. I can see that. Yeah. I guess because they all work for Avon, I look at it as such higher stakes.
Of course.
And this plays into a little bit about when you're talking about the dinner, D'Angelo, the way that he sees himself versus the way I see him in the show, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, I can see that. We come back from the. Okay.
No, that's all.
We come back from the credits. The quote is a little late, be a little slow, be a little late. from Avon, which would happen near the end of the episode. So we get to Omar hitting the corner with John Bailey and Brandon, his boyfriend. They're drawing in the dirt. They're hitting a new crew. Of course, Omar's staying, I guess, away from the Avon crew after he hit them already. So he's hitting another crew. Judge Fallon going down to the detail, down in the basement.
Well, let's talk about Omar real quick, because he mentioned the East Side Chumps, right? So he's kind of like referring to that crew as almost like just a territory you can take over, right? Is that essentially what's going on? So.
Yeah, or maybe not. Maybe they don't have as much numbers. They're not as street smart.
Yeah.
You consider, right? Omar was scouting Avon's crew for days at least. This looks like they, assuming that this was just a few days later, judging by how quick Herc and Carver picked up Bodie, this must have just been a day or two later.
I'm going to assume it's a week because later on McNulty makes a comment about how the affidavit took a week. So I'm going to just kind of guess it's a week.
Okay, there you go. Good catch.
But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. Omar's like, yeah, these East Side Chumps are nothing like Barksdale's guys. It's like, I don't know. Like you were talking about the hierarchy. It's kind of to that point.
Yeah, East Side not as respected.
Yeah.
So we go down into the basement. Judge Fallon is down there with the detail crew, Greg's McNulty, and they are going to swear them to the affidavit. We're kind of learning a little bit of just, I guess, back channels of how these things work, and kind of interesting that it's a little humdrum. It's not so snazzy. They're in their dark basement. The judge comes to them. They swear on the affidavit. He grants them the I guess the warrant or whatever for the pen register for the pager. They turn it on, and then they're just sitting there.
Yeah.
And there's some mention of celebrities are not that big in person or when you meet them in real life, and it looks like just very unexciting.
Yeah. What's the name of the prosecutor that's sleeping with McNulty?
Rhonda Perlman.
Yeah, well, did you catch that line with Perlman where she kind of says they're kind of commenting on being on the underground, like, oh, we went to the wrong door because we couldn't find it. They're just talking about how much of a cave it is or whatever, and then she makes a comment, spoken like a true troglodyte, and then like Kima and him have kind of like a look when she says it. So I don't know if you caught that or think anything of that.
Well, you think anyone knows their situation?
Between I think that was Kima getting wise to it. That was my interpretation. Kima,
that there's like, something,
or something. Yeah, maybe she didn't put it together all the way, but she's like, that comment was a little too familiar for this scenario. So.
Yeah, and I wonder how much they know about McNulty at this point. I mean, they know that he slept around. We're going to find out that he's a bit of a dog, and so I don't think anything like that has been. Maybe Kima's starting to catch on a little bit.
Okay. Well, we'll interact some more in this episode. So
they pit. So the cloner's on, the pager's on. Now we get Omar actually in the crew or on the streets, and
him whistling. Yo,
it's kind of his trademark, his calling card.
Is it? Okay, so
well, they all know, right?
Along or.
Well, they all know it.
No, yeah, they know he's coming. Yeah,
they all know it.
Runs in your house, hide your kids, hide your wives. You know what I mean?
And he's whistling the He Stands Alone with a sawed off, and chases them into the alley. The plan plays out exactly like Omar drew it up in the huddle, and
they're showing how he's a real tactician in his world. So it's really interesting to see them build him up right now. So
yeah, just a lot of swagger. You're finding out why he's some of people's favorite character on the show right now. We get to so there's a lot of jumping back and forth. A lot of these scenes are just a lot of scenes in this episode.
Back to the pit, right?
Back to the pit. Poot and Bodie talking about girls, condoms. Wallace and Bodie kind of having a little bit of a tussle, as you mentioned, a little verbal joust.
Yeah, well, not Wallace as much as it was D'Angelo.
I'm sorry, D'Angelo.
But Wallace was kind of a casualty of that. Or let me tell in order, I guess, because it started with them talking about the bug, which I didn't catch because of, I guess, the cultural reference at the time that they were talking about AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming now with context they're talking about AIDS, right?
Yeah. Well, this isn't that long ago. I mean, it's 15 years ago.
Referred to as the bug before. That's why I was like,
yeah.
Bug. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you like a lot of slang in this, in these scripts.
But yeah, it was weird. So I don't know if you have thoughts on what triggered Bodie, because it started as a conversation about wearing condoms, and he's like, nobody likes to taste of rubber. D'Angelo pops up with "How would you know?" Kind of embarrassed him, and then almost to get his, I don't know, was he trying to get his credibility back? I don't know what it was, but it was the next thing was him throwing the bottle at Wallace, who was playing with something. I'm not sure what it was.
An action figure, Transformer, something like that. I think it's I think it's
him. Like, it just seemed very almost. Wallace was kind of an innocent bystander, and he used that moment. And D'Angelo was gonna confront him, like, what nigga, like he was about to come in his face, and then the pager went off. So I don't know.
I think I take it as face value. Kind of, it's a drug area. You shouldn't be playing with your toys when you're on the clock.
Okay.
One, you're supposed to be paying attention. Two, it's a bad look. It's you know what I mean. It's little kid.
After, like, they were cool. He was there from the beginning of the scene.
I don't think he was
that exchange.
I don't know if he was paying attention.
Maybe, yeah, okay.
But I mean, imagine how embarrassing that would be, to be 15 years old and your buddy is on your spot there. I don't want to say it's a corner because they're in a courtyard, but he's at your spot playing with his little toy, his action figure. Right? That'd be kind of embarrassing.
Yeah. After you just escaped juvie hospital, sure.
Yeah, I think it's more of a just a clear delineation between Bodie's mindset. You look at this, happens a lot in shows. Stranger Things, it was one of the arcs of the seasons where you have kids that are kind of up here with girls, and then you got Wallace that's down here playing with his toys still. Right? These guys are talking about getting oral sex and wearing condoms, and girls that are dirty, and Wallace is over here playing with his toys. I think they're making a very clear delineation as far as the maturity level.
Yeah.
Maybe even the maturity level needed for, to do a job like this. So like I said, Bodie kind of throws a bottle at him. D'Angelo tries to stick up for him a little bit. They kind of go face to face. The pager goes off. Of course, everyone's watching. The cops are watching on their end. They can't understand the number. The number comes in. It makes no sense.
No sense, yeah.
So Prez...
And Prez,
Prez gets to pretty much play the audience and asks, what's this code? What's going on? And or basically not the code, I'm sorry. They're explaining how the pager works. How the cloning, what's actually happening, what are we seeing on the screen when this pager is going off? Which
Nolte has a copy, and then there's also the legal version, which is happening at headquarters, which they'll use in court.
Right, it's an actual computer screen where the numbers go across as far as what's being typed in, and what goes across essentially is a phone number, usually followed by some sort of an identifier code. And so without this, you would just have to know how, like you were kind of asking before after we watched the episode, what does a pager do? Like, pagers are very antiquated. Only doctors have them now, but in the early 2000s, late 90s, it was a big part of, kid life. My friends had pagers in high school, drug dealers. That was always the joke when, I don't even know if it's a joke, but it was always the rebuttal. When you want a pager, they said, what do you need a pager for? What are you, a drug dealer?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we get to find out how all that works. Kima is sitting in on Omar's van. They're staking it out. They're going to go ahead with this plan that they talked about last episode to basically jack up Omar, get him on a gun charge because they're going to assume that he's holding a weapon, and then make him work it off by snitching on Avon.
Yeah.
And again, more jumping around, just scene to scene to scene. Stringer fills in D'Angelo that he thinks that they have a snitch in the pit. And so he's got a plan that he wants D'Angelo to carry out where you stop paying everybody. You tell them no payday. And it's kind of cold blooded, but D'Angelo says, if you don't pay somebody, basically the plan is you don't pay them, and then see who doesn't have any money by the end of the week. The people that don't have any money have no other means of income, which means they're probably good, they're probably clean. The person that seems to still have money, person's still eating, that person's getting money from somewhere else, which they assume would be the person snitching information to D'Angelo or to Omar or to the cops. But that's kind of that's Stringer's plan. And D'Angelo tells him, you don't pay a guy, he's not going to work for you. And Stringer says, "What's he going to do? Wait, you going to go to college? What are you going to do?" And it's kind of sad because these are kids we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. It's a little sad, but it also all I was thinking the whole time was kind of how, more to what we were saying last week, how Stringer's really the Ned Stark of this series. Like, he's, you know what I mean? Like, Omar is in charge of everything, but Stringer's the one out there making sure that shit's getting done. So he has to actually give this strategy to D'Angelo. Like, D'Angelo has no way of flushing out the rat himself, if there is a rat, presumably, right? We know it's Bubs, but just from their perspective.
He doesn't even realize there's a problem to begin. He's not putting anything together.
Exactly.
In the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the plan. And then before we kind of leave the scene, we see that Poot is on the phone. D'Angelo walks over, smacks it away.
Would he have done that if Stringer was not down there? I don't think so. Especially after what happened with Bodie earlier. I feel like he wouldn't have done it that way. But.
Well, now that you mention what you mentioned and asking what you asked about Bodie and if he did that to kind of save face by throwing the bottle at Wallace earlier, it does kind of mirror what D'Angelo now goes and does to Poot by smacking the phone. I never really put that together.
Yeah.
So back down in the basement, Prez is photocopying a phone pad. Are you putting together what's going on at that point? I'm
thinking Prez is just bullshitting here, just passing the time. And I want to just say how beautiful the writing is, because you always see Prez. Yes, he's bullshitting, but he's always doing crosswords. He loves puzzles, and you think it's just a bullshit thing for him to do, and then it ends up playing a part into the story. So it's beautiful. I love that.
It's one of those things that helps snap it all together for you.
Mm-hmm. And then the spy from McNulty's departments, they're getting drunk a little bit on the job.
That's Polk. That's that's the drunk guy. The spy is Santangelo, who we still haven't seen.
Santangelo, who has been missing in action forever.
Yeah, he's kind of spiky white hair, shorter.
Okay, sorry, got my guys mixed up.
No, it's okay. So Polk's still on the job, on the detail after failing to throw himself down a flight of stairs. Mm-hmm. Just floating through as liquid.
So so where do we go next? I know we're a lot of moving
we're back on the stakeout. McNulty's calling his wife about the kids, and the kids, I guess, are supposed to sleep over, and she clearly doesn't even believe that. Now, we've seen his house. And this is, I knew this ahead of time, as far as like what his place looks like and just how bachelor he is. But, we've seen where he sleeps. Looks like a living room with no box spring or no bed frame, at least.
No bed frame, yeah.
And so he's saying to his wife, oh, yes, I got all these things. And we're wondering, what's she talking about? And then she's making him list out the things that he's claiming to have bought as far as, pillows, pillowcases, comforters. Because she doesn't believe that he's properly prepared for the kids to sleep over at his house for visitation rights. Yeah. And, of course, as soon as he hangs up, he's angry. And he has a funny back and forth with Kima about his perception of his ex-wife. And as this is going on, a kid comes walking by and spots them. And right away, this little kid knows that they're cops and goes to, "Oh, you're not putting this together?"
No, but I had a question. Well, continue, because you think you might going to answer my question. But
okay. So the kid, as I take it, notices that they're cops and goes and tells Omar. And that's what puts the whole thing in motion.
My question was going to be if it was a choice from the writers. So how that scene starts, you see the kids cross the street, they're like, school's out, and then you see, like the shot you're referring to, you see one of the kids almost look inside the vehicle, then that triggers McNulty to kind of, hey, can I borrow your cell phone? And then he calls his ex-wife about the kids. So my question was kind of be totally unrelated to Omar. My question to you was kind of going to be, do you think he even remembered that his kids were coming and that he needed all that shit? Or was it, oh shit, school's out, I saw these kids. Now, oh shit, my kids, I got to go take care of this. I feel like that triggered him. And it's kind of telling the story of how bad a daddy is, basically. That's kind of what was my question. But yeah, tell me about this Omar plan, because I didn't see that. Because what I saw, it feel like Omar had already had his eye on the detail, because he caught what's his name, Sindor and Bubs out there doing the fake buys, and he was kind of observing Kima in her van. So I just assumed he already knew what was going on. So I didn't take that little kid as part of his organization. But tell me more. Maybe I missed it.
Well, I don't know if it's part of an organization. I just take it as Omar has friends all over who kind of look out.
Okay.
And so, this kid's eyeing him up and then immediately knocks. Obviously, it's not his house. This little kid knocks on the door, so it's not his house. And then we do see that later they run out when the meetup starts. They run out into the van from the back of that house.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I missed that. Good catch.
But I could be skipping like a couple scenes in between because the whole stuff with Bodie's happening at the same time, and it's a lot of back and forth. And
yeah, there's a lot of this episode. But they did a great job of making the story still fluid.
Oh yeah,
back and forth. So yeah.
Just in rundown form, it's tough to go back and forth between the same scene seven different times. But so I'm trying to like sum it all up in individual kind of key points. But then the cops also at the same time, Herc and Carver are running up on Bodie, who catch him. Who this is still from him escaping the boys' home last episode.
Right. And he hasn't been charged for his drug possession yet either, officially. So.
Right. So he's I'm imagining he has a warrant. At the same time, now we go back to McNulty, who did not buy that stuff.
Right.
And so he's now got he's getting all the stuff, and he's sitting there, he's got his booze, and we're going to get to see him a little bit trying to put this bed together.
I'm sure there's some symbolism to the song he's singing, but I'm not familiar with it. So
I don't remember what the song was now.
He was singing something to himself. So
there's great music throughout the whole show though. So it might've meant something. We go back to Bodie, and this is one of my favorite scenes. Bodie and Herc and Carver playing good cop, bad cop. And Carver is still holding on to this scenario that he painted last episode when they were driving up to the boys' home of basically saving the day. So they're going to play good cop, bad cop. Carver goes in. Yeah, he goes in playing good cop, takes off the handcuffs and tries to relate to Bodie. Tells Bodie, I was like you. Tells him he's I think he said East Side. He grew up, and Bodie's kind of going along with it, and really grew up hard. And Bodie really, really feeding in, and Carver eventually says, I think maybe we should work something out. And the whole premise of this is that Bodie has no other choice because they've painted Mahone, the cop that Bodie punched, as Herc's uncle. And he's not doing too well. And now Herc wants to come in and tear Bodie apart. And so he better work this out with Carver now, or else bad cop will come in. And just a great back and forth and a great payoff for me. I told you, it's one of my favorite scenes. Carver eventually leading in, and what do you want? I want for you to suck my dick.
How do you feel about Herc and Carver? Did you notice the end of the scene when they got Bodie, how Carver hands Herc back his business cards? Is like, you won't be needing this anymore. Kind of shot at him. What do you think of that?
I thought it was good. Just a good callback for a little scene that in the end doesn't really go anywhere, I guess. But it doesn't make it wasteful. At least we know he went home. We know he kept the card.
Yeah.
Why did he keep the card? I don't know.
Yeah. Kind of mirrored that good cop, bad cop stuff. So then we go back to D'Angelo, and this is the scene I have starred, because it's just a real, I know how he feels, to be perfectly honest. I've been in situations, I've been in places where I feel like everyone's staring at me, even though they're probably not. And I think it was really interesting that that was kind of what the story was, telling us how insecure he is, even though he's got the money to be in that restaurant, but he doesn't belong. He doesn't feel like he belongs either. So,
yeah, so they go to this restaurant where they clearly stand out, and they're just very out of place. The entire scene as we kind of go back and forth to them, and D'Angelo is the whole time just talking about, I don't know, I guess, do they know what I'm about? Not even knowing, like, I guess, how to behave in situations like this. He doesn't know the culture, and so, asking, do you have reservations? And think, oh, I thought I could just walk in. I know the feeling of not knowing, not, like you said, not feeling like you belong somewhere. I felt like as this played out, though, he sounded more and more delusional. And this kind of, this is what I was talking. Well, this is what I was talking about as far as, how he sees himself.
okay.
Talking about, you think they know what I'm about. He was talking as if he was the kingpin, I felt. He was talking as if he had the responsibility of his uncle, when in reality, he's a low-level drug dealer.
I mean, when he said, do you know what I'm about? I kind of could see that, but the rest of the conversation was about, no matter where I think I have it quoted here. It's like, some shit just stay with you. Yeah. So it's more so he has the stink of the tower still on him, or the whatever, the pit, wherever he's from. I'm not sure where he's from, but wherever he was raised and born, it feels like no matter how much money I have, no matter where I am, what we're doing, I'm here, and I still don't realize that those desserts on the cart are the fake ones and the real ones that are behind it. You know what I mean? So,
but he doesn't have money. He doesn't really have that much money is kind of my point. And he's not, he's just not a big, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I felt like, and I know that it's racially charged.
But I think it isn't, because that's what he says. He says, because she's like, we're not the only black people in here. He's like, it's not even about that. So I feel like it's not race necessarily, it's class. It's he's a poor dude, basically. It's more about, I'm poor and they know it, and even though I have my drug dealer money, which granted it's not Avon money, but it's enough to get me in this restaurant and pay the bill, I still feel out of place. I still feel like I don't belong. And then she's trying to tell him, well, you can make your story whatever you want it to be. That's what money's for. So I mean, that was my takeaway. It was kind of like he's still insecure, even though he may be in a better position than he sees himself in.
Yeah, Donette definitely seemed to have a better handle on the world, and less self-conscious. I don't know. He just the way he was speaking felt like he was speaking of a guy who had the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think that was him seeing it as, I got the weight on the world on my shoulder because granted, he controls the pit, right? So he does have responsibility. So he's like, yo, do you think they know I'm a drug dealer? I felt he just was scared. Like Scarface in that restaurant where he talks about being the bad guy and everyone stares at him.
But it's Scarface.
Yeah,
but
right.
And that's why I say that.
There's some delusion to it, for sure.
And that's why I felt like he was so delusional, because Scarface says that, and he's Scarface, and people are staring at him. No one was looking at D'Angelo.
Nobody was looking at him.
Nobody was paying. And he was speaking of a guy that had a high profile, like anyone cared. He looked like any average black guy walking into a restaurant with his girlfriend or wife.
Yeah, I mean, he did. But I think your perception of that, realizing that, is like, why is he so delusional? And me, I almost stepped into his shoes, and it's like, yo, man, they're all staring at me. I'm paranoid because I feel like I don't belong, or I'm guilty about what I've done to get here. It's one or the other. I don't know what it is. I don't know the source of it, but I feel like that's what they were hinting at, that he feels a sense of not belonging there, whether it's because he grew up poor or because he's not proud of how he got there. I don't know.
I add it to another one. I take his feelings at face value, but I also added to another one of D'Angelo's just twisted thoughts of the world, along with Mr. McNugget, the dollar, the president's on the dollar bill, all that shit that he talks to the kids about in the pit on the couch.
Are you familiar with the concept of who won the scene or whatever? How like someone always wins a scene when there's two people involved?
No, tell me. I mean, I can guess, but tell me about it.
I mean, I don't have any more to say to it than like between
who shines.
It's just, I guess, whatever the conflict is, or Donette. Thank you. So Donette and D'Angelo, Donette makes a point that your story is whatever you make it. You got money, and then he's like, all right, cool, I can see that. The card comes up, he takes the wrong cake, it embarrasses him, and she kind of makes it look like shit. Maybe not. I don't know. I just felt like there was a little. And the button on the end was kind of like she's trying to encourage him to embrace his lifestyle and like, yo, don't feel out of place. No one's looking at you. And then in the end, he ends up kind of messing up. And then she's like, you might be right. Maybe you are out of place. I don't know.
So you're saying, so you think she won the scene in that case?
If we were applying that, yeah, I think she won. Not that they were really in competition. They were trying to help each other. But yeah, she won that scene, I think.
Well, wouldn't he have won because he was right?
Good point. Yeah, he was right. Yeah.
Although you got to wonder, if we're going to get that deep into it, are his own fears making him right? Are his own fears putting him out of place? And the fact that, who just grabs a cake off the tray anyway, whether it's
handing it to you, yeah,
right, whether you're being served, whether it's a sample or not,
yeah. So you're right. So that's a good point too.
All of that. I compound all of that with stuff like maybe he doesn't go out to dinner that often, which to me says maybe he really doesn't have any money.
I think he has enough money because we talk. Well, let's keep going because we talk. Money comes back up, and that's a great scene too.
He also just came home. Let's not forget that he was in jail for 8 months.
Yeah, so he's probably splurging a little bit. So
now we start going back and forth, right? With Stringer and Avon in the club, but we keep going back and forth still with Herc and Carver. They're playing pool with Bodie, and so they're playing pool. They're betting money on the game. They're buying him a sandwich. They're kind of playing odd couple, odd threesome.
Yeah, it's interesting. They're building this little relationship, and at first I'm like, is this a disingenuous thing where they're like messing with him? But it seems to be some genuine, like they have some affection for the kid to a degree.
Yeah.
By the end of it.
Because at the end they even kind of threaten to beat him up again when he kind of insults them, but then at the end he says, "Oh, that sandwich was good," and so they let him go, or they bring him in peacefully.
Yeah, so it was interesting. I didn't care for. I do get triggered a little bit by the blatant police brutality. So when they just start beating the shit out of him, I become Team Bodie, even though most of the time he's an asshole and I don't like Bodie. But when they're beating the shit out of him, I'm on his side for the most part. So.
He's also a fugitive at this point who punched punched a police officer in a legitimate drug raid.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Nah, he's a criminal. Don't get me.
That leads the writer David Simon talks about there not being good guys and bad guys so much because it's not real life, and so he tries not to write things like that with police officers always being good or the drug dealers always being bad. There's
definitely shades of gray for sure.
But yeah, we do start getting into Avon and Stringer. They're talking about a corner that they want to take over, run by some guy named Scar.
Edison Gully, I believe they said.
What's that?
Edison Gully, I believe, that's what I have written down, if I wrote it correctly.
Yeah.
Edison Gully is the area they're trying to take over now.
Yeah. And so I guess we're learning about the inner workings of like drug dealer business and, goal attention and hierarchy and climbing the corporate structure of gangs and the pay structure involved in that.
Yeah, I mean, that was real interesting to me that they decided to give Stinkum a promotion. Basically, he's going to have his own territory where he's going to make a percentage off of. I didn't know what he meant at first when he said points on the pack. I didn't know if that meant he was getting a pack that was extra potent. So it meant you getting points on the pack like, oh, you're yeah, but now I understand by points on the package meant that he's getting a percentage of the profit. Like right. I just thought he meant he was getting the strong, which was both. I was still right. He's getting a stronger pack than everybody else. Like the people at the towers, people at the pit, they're getting the old blue tops or whatever it was, and whatever they're getting now, Stinkum is going to attract all the new customers. It sounds like. So.
Yeah, but yeah, points on the package, like in gambling,
right.
or. When you owe a debt in Mafioso, as I'm also watching Sopranos right now, when they lend you money, they'll blend it at 2.5 points or 3 points. That's your interest, right? So
Stinkum is no longer a salaried employee, but he is a entrepreneur.
Right. And so he'll be making money off of what his corner and his crew, he tells them to crew up. They lay out who's going to approach this Scar to take over the corner. They're going to allow him to peacefully leave. If he goes with that, it'll be all good. If not,
Get out.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to take his corner from him. And so they set that whole thing up, and we also get a little bit of we get the page. Avon gets a page.
That went right over my head the first watch, so I'm glad you pointed it out to me at the end of us watching, because that whole story thread went over my head because I was so engrossed in everything else. But yeah, Avon gets the page,
and it probably took me 4 times watching it to get that, to pay attention to that, or to even realize that guy's name is John Bailey, and every time they talk about him, and so there's a page that Avon gets. And instantly he knows that we got one. And Stringer asks, "Are we talking about Omar?" He says, "No, one of the youngins." We later find out it's John Bailey, the other guy, not Brandon, the boyfriend, but the third member of Omar's crew.
Mm-hmm. Well, apparently he smokes too, or he shoots up. They said he
cops.
So
yeah. So we keep going back and forth into the club a lot, but at the end, we kind of end with them telling Stinkum about his promotion, and they go to make a money run. And we get to kind of see a little bit of Avon's office during this time, as far as the safe. He transfers money with a trash bag with a physical money run wherever they put it. Obviously, they can't show legit money, as Avon mentions later on in the episode. And I don't know, just it feels so small timey.
Does it really?
I mean, it's stacks of money, but it's just this little safe in this office that he transfers in a big old trash bag. It just feels so...
I don't know. Well, I mean, to that point, and I don't want to jump ahead too much, but don't we hear about all the properties he owns and stuff? So it seems like it's almost like a smart move. He keeps his cash on the move.
Completely off the books.
And then he owns properties, so, under legit businesses. So,
yeah. The casings, turns out the casings to Deidre Kessing's murder, of the fuck scene from last episode with Bunk and McNulty, actually matched two other drug murders from the previous year. And Bunk is shocked. Bubbles goes to visit Johnny, who is in the hospital after...
Before you go to Bubbles, did you notice in the scene with Bunk, Jay, and McNulty, how each of them correct each other on Leggett's name, or Leggett, or whatever it is? Each of them correct the other. It's like, I don't know. I thought that was cool. That's all.
Yeah. Bubbles goes to visit Johnny in the hospital after he's recovering from his beatdown from the fake dollar bill scheme.
Yep.
And that's where he
has the bug.
Where he mentions he's got the bug. And Bubbles like, how do you know? He tested him. You have to wonder at this point. Bubbles is thinking, does he have it?
Right, because sharing needles together.
Right. Bubbles has kind of guilt, I guess, over not being able to help Johnny. Watching it kind of feels like that's at the end, that's what this is all about. The fact that, he couldn't help Johnny. And I don't know, it felt like Bubbles has a heart, that there's more to Bubbles than this, than just, this is fun and games. And I go back to the scene when he's standing at the foot of Johnny's bed, a couple episodes ago, when Kima first comes and sees him, and he asks her, "Are you still working drugs?" when they kind of start this whole hat scheme that they're working out. And I kind of go back to that, and that being the real, while this was all fun and games, this is why he did it. Johnny was his friend, and Johnny doesn't really want him doing that. He doesn't really want him snitching.
Yeah. I mean, Johnny kind of checks him at the end. He's like, but you told me that's just a game, ain't it? Like, Johnny, I feel like in his head or in his heart, however you want to classify it, doesn't necessarily hold any grudge towards those people that beat him up. It's like, yo, I got caught trying to scam him. This is the game I'm in, So I thought it was interesting that different where Bubs is kind of no longer want to play in the game. Johnny wants to get back in as soon as he's out of that hospital.
Yeah, and literally wants to start ripping and running. I think they called it, and he's asking him, "Hey, I'm out in a month." He's in NA, right? He's clean and sober. He's in NA. He's wearing a colostomy bag, and he's now been diagnosed with HIV or AIDS, and he's ready to start getting back out on the street and using drugs again. And he's asking him, and it's these terms that they use, like smoke out and how these, you ask them who's got the best package, and Bubbles tells them that, these guys had a smoke out, knocked a couple niggas out. It's like this, I don't know. Stringer uses a term like that too at a point in the show where, about like fiends, and he wants fiends dropping, or Avon used the term, I want these fiends dropping. Like, it's incredible. I don't know, just the way that it's so animalistic, I guess, the way that drug addicts are talked about.
How you mean?
I don't know, just the better the drug means that they're going to probably drop dead.
I guess I mean with Bubs and Jay, because they're both, or not Jay, Johnny.
Well, he says what's the best, who's got the best product right now? Yeah, and he says, these guys had a smoke out the other day, knocked a couple guys out. Meaning, like, I was assuming a couple guys OD'd, and that's the best package. It's so good.
I didn't think it that far. Yeah, I didn't think anybody OD'd. I just think it was like they did a smoke out, which was like a sample sale, basically, if you want to call it that. And then people were knocked the fuck out, like it was that good. I didn't take it as a OD, but
it was that. But even though it knocked a couple of people out, would you drink a drink? Would you do a shot of a drink that makes you pass out?
I mean, no, I wouldn't. But if you're doing heroin or well, actually, what drug are they selling? I'm sorry, I don't know if we ever established that. Is it H or is it, what are they selling?
Yeah, it's heroin, I believe.
Okay, it's heroin. All right,
yeah,
all right. So
yeah. There's also, so there will be times when they talk about coke, like they might say coke and dope, or ice. They might call it ice.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think there's also that.
Yeah. Cocaine. So but yeah, assuming if you're a heroin addict, you want something that's gonna knock you out. I don't know. So.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's just crazy for me. This is before, Breaking Bad and before a lot of other drug shows. And so the terminology or just the whole mentality of drug addicts in the world of drug business, that the more potent, the better. I don't know. It's just shit that I never really heard prior to this. Landsman. Landsman tells McNulty about his conversation with Rolls, brags to him about helping him with the case, pulls down his pants, tells him, and it's funny because this goes back to the conversation that Jay had with Major Rolls when he said that he's addicted to himself, and he thought he was the smartest fuck in the room. He probably was the smartest fuck in the room. It's not his fault. When he tells McNulty, hey, how about that case that I got right? And he says, oh, sure, of course, you wouldn't have had to go that far if what's his name didn't fuck it up. And Landsman has to tell him, we can't all be princes in the city. You can't all be princes of the city, can we? And tells him, like, just forget about the other people. And it's one of those things, he's trying to reel him back in. We get it, Jimmy. You're smart. You're really smart.
And then he kind of tells him that he did kind of helped him out with Rawls. He gives him that heads up.
Mm-hmm. And so he's got to come back in 2 weeks. So that's the deal.
Yeah. That was interesting that they're just, you tell he's trying to give olive branches to Jimmy. He sees that he's a good cop. So,
but at the same time, there's just zero care for the case. How close are we on the case? What's going on with the case, whatever. They just open up
like, it's not his case. You're talking about the detail, right? You're referring to that. Yeah, I mean, it's not his case. Why do I give a shit? I mean, I threw you a bone giving you this murder that might be related. Like,
yeah. I don't know. I guess I would just think that you have all these different cops from different departments that people would want it solved properly.
Yeah, but it's almost
so that the killing can stop. Wallace asked for
an advance,
a payday. Yeah, payday.
Predicted to the T, which was amazing.
So they need money. Says they're broke, and D'Angelo's actually happy that Wallace needs money because it means that he's probably not the snitch.
And you see how Poot look at D'Angelo. He has his back to the whole situation, but he's listening. Like, Poot's an interesting character now that I'm seeing more of him.
McNulty and Bunk go and talk to the friend that gave the tip about Deidre. They go to her place, and we learn a little bit more. The cops learn a little bit more about Avon in general. We learn what the beef was between Avon and Deidre that sent D'Angelo over there in the first place, and that she was a girlfriend, but he had many girlfriends, as we saw in the beginning of the episode. She got jealous, threatened to go to the cops about all types of stuff. And so that's probably what initiated the killing that we learned about last episode. We also learn, or the cops also learn, that he owns Orlando's, a nightclub, and that's all news to them, which gets your guys, I guess we go to the club. I was going to say get your guy Daniels out at night, which you were shocked by.
Yeah, I was shocked to see him out at night doing police work, so it was cool. I had 2 notes about that scene with Bunk and McNulty. One thing was they did this one close-up of, what was her name talking? I'm sorry, I don't know her name.
I can't remember her name.
Whatever
the
her name
friend,
was.
Sorry.
In the story, yeah, the friend.
Horrible recap.
Sorry, I mean, we're not going to see her again, so.
Yeah,
anyway, they were telling the story of her, of the friend getting killed, and they just did this one close-up. It was the only close-up in the whole scene, and it was when she was talking about how she wrote a letter about Avon or to Avon or whatever it is. But when she was telling that part of the story, they did a close-up. I thought that was intentional because it was only close-up in the whole thing. So that must mean that letter is going to come back into play. Or something about the letter. And then the other thing I thought was interesting was, you see how McNulty started snooping through her stuff when they first got in there? He was going through her like diary or her journal or whatever that was.
Yeah.
It's good cop work, I guess, but it's also illegal. Like, you definitely illegally searching for evidence. But
yeah.
I thought it was interesting. McNulty's like, McNulty was painted as like kind of like the Boy Scout cop in the beginning, and now as it's going along, we're seeing him kind of be less of a Boy Scout.
Mm-hmm. With an eye on the prize.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we do get into the club, and outside of that's where Greggs and McNulty and Daniels are watching. But inside the club, Orlando is talking to D'Angelo about kind of being frustrated about, and this is where we learn a little bit more about the pay structure, the fact that he's just a front for the liquor board for the nightclub, and he's on a salary. Yeah, he gets no money in the actual club itself, and kind of tells actually D'Angelo about the promotion for Stinkum. So it's interesting that Orlando is the nightclub front, but he knows about some of the drug operation. Yeah,
well, I think because a lot of us ran out of there, right?
Right.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't Stinkum in charge of Orlando's? Wasn't he the one in the first episode that like let people up and stuff like that, or was that somebody else?
I took that as just like security for up top for Avon when he's up there. Okay. Avon and Stringer.
Got it.
Yeah, because I think at this point he was just kind of muscle and a drug guy. Had a corner and Judge.
That was his exact words. Like,
right.
String's like, oh, he's smiled something, like, and Avon's like, yeah, he earned it. So
he was the re-up guy also. He's the guy that, remember, Omar beat up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
But I would think, judging by D'Angelo's reaction, they're looked at as kind of somewhat equals or peers in the organization, because D'Angelo's a little bit disappointed, it seems, that Stinkum's getting a promotion and getting more money. So that's where we see that the detail is outside, checking them out, and they're talking about property. And the case is the first time we're kind of hearing them talk about stuff outside of drugs.
Yeah.
And I think they have the impression that their bosses will be very happy when they hear about like property that you could possibly seize.
Right. He was saying something about like, seizures that will help the financial stability or whatever, however he put it. I forget how he put it, but basically we could seize seize Avon's properties and use that for our money, basically.
Assets, right? Yeah. That's the word.
Yeah.
We see Omar and Brandon gearing up to go back out for another job. They're looking for John Bailey. They don't know that we know that he's already dead. McNulty and Greggs come back to the office, back down the basement, and Prez is telling him that he's cracked the code.
That's my second scene I started because I just thought it gave Prez such a important W. He's been useless. So
yeah. So the whole time that he's photocopying this phone, he's doing it, as he explains, he likes to play crossword puzzles or word searches. And so he basically circle numbers on the phone a bunch of times on all the copies, trying to figure out what the code is. And that's what he actually tapped into McNulty and Greg's pager. They didn't get it. He explains it to him, and McNulty is ecstatic.
He kisses him on the mouth.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. What do you think about the code?
It's smart. I like it. It's something simple. I swear I've heard that before. Jump to 5. So now I know where it comes from. If it's from this.
Okay.
And like I said, it gave Prez something to do. So it showed he has some competency, right? So before he was just like this asshole who was entitled. So now we know he has some skill set. So it's good.
We get to the mental hospital where Avon takes D'Angelo to see D'Angelo's uncle, Avon's brother. And this is where he mentions that it's kind of, I guess, a kind of a rundown mental facility. And basically that's where he mentions that they can't show any legitimate money. And that's why his brother's in a facility like this. They mention D'Angelo's mom, Avon's sister, is around. Yeah, she's around there somewhere in the world of The Wire. And so this is, I don't know, it's a creepy scene, I think. They basically take him to meet or to see his uncle. Avon takes D'Angelo to see his uncle, who is essentially, I guess, brain dead.
Seems like it, yeah.
He's got bullet scar on his head, and he basically makes D'Angelo stand there and watch him while Avon tells D'Angelo that this guy, used to live the life until he got caught. And now he says, talk that talk now, or talk that shit now, baby. And she tells him, this is where the quote comes from. Be a little bit late, be a little bit slow. And basically telling D'Angelo, which I think is creepy after we just found out that they think he has a snitch in the pit. He's basically telling him, be on your P's and Q's. That's not a phrase they would use in The Wire, but to stay with it. And he says, how are you never going to be a little bit late, a little bit slow? And I don't know, he stares at him, and D'Angelo was already uncomfortable, but it feels like D'Angelo now is just thinking about, it felt doom and gloom to me. Not as someone who knows about what's happening on the show. It just felt like everything that's like building up. It just feels like a doom and gloom speech as D'Angelo stares at him.
Yeah, I mean, I took it as Avon kind of externalizing his paranoia that we started the scene with. It's like, someone's out to get me, I can end up like this. He has a cool little line where it's like, if he died, I could have carried it better. But this, like, so
can't plan for no shit like this. Right? So it's interesting. At no point do you ever feel like Avon, like D'Angelo's in any danger, though, right? Like, you don't ever feel like Avon's mad at D'Angelo, or he's right.
No, not yet, or not at all, because he talks about family. He has a whole speech about family being so important in the beginning. So that kind of softened me up from the beginning. I thought he might have been mad about the raid, but he is yet to be reprimanded for that.
That's what I mean. Like,
or the robbery, either one.
As I'm watching Sopranos, I feel like that would be a speech that Tony would give, to one of his soldiers in a threatening way, that if you fuck up, this is where you're going to end up, type of thing. But it wasn't right. It wasn't that at all. Even though all the principles, as far as they think he has a snitch, sees the guy on the cell phone when Stringer goes there, just all these things happening, him writing the letter in the interrogation room, like all these things but it's not that way. And it just seems like Avon has a real love for D'Angelo.
Yeah.
Outside of the business.
Saying letter again, just strike a nerve in me, because like that's the second time a letter has been. We had D'Angelo's letter, and now we had the letter about Avon. Oh. So I don't know. Now you got me thinking about letters. But go ahead.
Now we're at the stakeout again of Omar's van, and this is where they run out. This is where Omar and Brandon run out into the van, and Greg's and McNulty are gonna follow them, and they pull into a graveyard. What are you thinking at this point when they're pulling into this graveyard?
Again, another really tense scene. I don't know what's about to happen. I know Omar is capable of anything, and then when McNulty declines backup, I'm screaming at the TV at that point, like, why would you not call for backup? You don't know what this dude's gonna do to you. But luckily it didn't turn out violent. So
it's a highly intelligent, witty dialogue scene, just great acting, great, I don't know, ensemble acting. Is that what you would call this? Just
characters are bouncing off of each other. Brandon, is that his name? Omar's lover. Yeah, like Brandon, even him in the scene, he had little nuances that added to it. So it was really well acted scene for everybody.
Yeah, so Omar and Brandon get out of the van. They hold the hands up. McNulty and Greggs are checking them. And right away, like the scene flips instantly when he says, Greg says the van is clean. And Omar says, got to keep it clean. Got to keep it clean. We have one of our parlays here, meaning this whole thing was a plan. He's purposely led them out to this graveyard to have a peaceful conversation about, well, basically, he knows what they want. He says, I'm not taking a charge, and I don't believe in snitching. The game is not played that way. I can't just come out and help all of you. And they say, oh, we respect that. And so they give him his card. They give Omar their card. And if you happen to take a charge, give us a call. They let him and Brandon know about John Bailey.
Now, that was the turning point in the scene, I think, because that conversation was probably going to end the way it ended. It was him getting cops off his back. But when they gave him that piece of information, I think it prompted Omar to respond and give them some information.
Yeah, and just on that, there's something that McNulty continues to bring up is kind of his background and where he came up, and mentioning that he used to patrol the homes, and that's how he knew John Bailey. He also similarly talks about how he knew No Hard Anthony, and I don't know. I think the background that they give him McNulty just as a guy that knows his shit and remembers everybody.
Yeah.
Which again, good police. But I only say that because he mentions it again when he tells them that John Bailey got shot, and that John Bailey was a friend of Omar's brother as well.
To tell your brother that he passed away. It was kind of his sly way of letting him know and feeling him out, I think. But I don't think he was expecting Omar to tell him what he told him.
Right. So in turn, he gives him, one good deed deserves another. So Omar tells him, hey, you trying to catch up with Bird? Where does he drop the working man? And they have no idea what he's talking about. You didn't either. I don't think I did. I don't think I did either. And basically force it out of Omar that the working man, he doesn't. Omar still leaves. Yeah, Omar still leaves that up to imagination. He says there's only but one working man, and your snitch can help you with Bird. Bubbles knows Bird, reveals to them that he knows that Bubbles is their snitch on the street, and that Bird is the guy that killed the working man, the witness in the original season or episode 1 case against D'Angelo.
Yeah,
that was a mouthful.
So that's quite the reveal. And also, I mean, from my perspective, how does Omar know? It's interesting. There's a lot of question marks.
And even Bird, at this point, all we've heard about Bird was mentioned during the previous scene with Stringer and Avon, that we're going to put Bird and Weebay on Scar if Scar won't get off of Stinkum's corner. And so we see Bird, but we still don't have him identified. I know he's Bird, but it's Fredro Starr, which we'll see in one of the final scenes here.
Okay. So it sounds like that's the designated hitter, if that's the case. If he really did, I'm assuming at this point that Omar's information is factual, that he did kill the working man, and they have called him up because I remember Avon said basically, see if homie from New York, Scar, will go by peacefully. Stringer and then pull up with Bird in the back, and they're like, that's a dude right there in the jersey. So it doesn't sound like it's a situation because they brought Bird along. So
it seems like it's in his job description.
Yeah.
McNulty goes to pick up his kids. There's nobody there.
Poor McNulty.
Yeah, poor McNulty. And again, we're just still jumping around. More and more scenes. Freeman goes to see Daniels back in the basement, and basically sums up in one of the greatest lines I've ever heard on TV. I don't want to go to no dance unless I can rub some tit.
All the times I've danced, I don't know if I've ever rubbed tits when I did it, but
you never try to push up against a little bit when you're
dance, I guess. I don't know, but good for Freeman. He deserves some tit, so he's a good cop. So.
Yeah, so he's basically telling Daniels that we should have been up on these payphones a while ago, and we're behind the drug dealers, and that's really your fault. And he's telling them that I don't want to do this unless you're going to go to bat for us and really do this case. And they really just leave it there.
Yeah, because Daniels never responds. It's all Freeman talking, and he kind of says, we could get the money and he's going to get the drugs, and if we keep pushing, we get the money too. So
right. So that's now the second time we've heard about, outside of just the drugs here of this case, we've heard about assets and now money.
Right.
Or at least real estate and money.
Mm-hmm.
We get Wallace and Poot. This is where things kind of this whole scene kind of formulates. I don't know. It felt big.
It really did. Especially, and me not knowing that John Bailey died. Me now knowing the second watch, John Bailey is dead. It puts it in a whole other perspective. It's like this guy is really,
they're hunting. Yeah. They're hunting these guys. And remember, there's a bounty on all their heads. That's not over from the last episode. And so John Bailey's down, and we get Wallace and Poot going into what's known as the Greeks, where they're talking.
They were comparing. That's where the sandwiches from earlier, right? Like the sandwich is better that Herc and Carver gave them, right?
And you can see the little sign of like the fish trout sandwiches, and that's where Bodie got right before the hit a couple episodes ago. So
yeah, that's right. That's exactly what he got, right?
And so basically, Wallace tells Poot that he threatened D'Angelo to take money out of the stash, or out of the stash, if he didn't pay him. And
right.
That's how he
do that if he didn't pay him. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so that's how they got money to eat, which is sad. But at the same time, Brandon is at the Greeks playing at the pinball machine. Poot recognizes him, and Wallace basically starts the plan in motion and goes to the payphone and calls D'Angelo. And we get to watch this all kind of play out in combination of the characters doing it, but also in the back office, in the basement of the detail, with the computer going haywire.
I love it. Every call, they show every number. It's like wonderfully done, just to show the depth of like what's happening in that scene. Not only is a murder plot being formulated, but also it's being recorded, or there's evidence of it being recorded.
Mm-hmm. So the way it works out is Wallace calls D'Angelo. Wallace beeps D'Angelo. Yeah, Wallace pages a lot of parts here. Wallace pages D'Angelo.
Yep.
D'Angelo calls Wallace back at the payphone. Wallace tells him about Brandon. D'Angelo pages Stringer. Stringer calls D'Angelo back at the payphone. D'Angelo tells Stringer that his crew is down there now. Stringer, Weebay, and Bird now go to the Greeks and meet up with Wallace and Poot, who are just standing there. And we got to learn a little bit more about how much Wallace trusts D'Angelo, because
is that Poot what it is? Because I thought it was a payoff from the whole loyalty because of the money. That's what I took it as. It's like Wallace is kind of like, D'Angelo said for us to stay, we're staying, because D'Angelo gave him money. He looked out for him.
I didn't look too much into that, other than I looked into it more, not the money I didn't look too much into. I looked into it more as D'Angelo said, stand here and wait. I'm going to wait.
All right, well, let me pose it to you this way then. If that scene earlier with Wallace and D'Angelo, with him asking them for an advance and him giving them the advance at the end, if that never happened, do you think that Wallace would have stayed and been so loyal and waited along with Poot? Or would
because of the scene with...
Probably right. Let's get out of here. He's not coming.
No, the scene that happened early with Bodie throwing the bottle and D'Angelo sticking up for him and that whole thing. That for me held more weight than the money scene, because we didn't get to see the money scene.
See, I don't know if he stuck up for him either, though. Because he threw the bottle, right? And then he got the cut, whatever. And he's like, you know what, nigga? And then he got a page right away. So, I mean, I don't know.
D'Angelo's thing, because D'Angelo's thing was always like, why does thing have to be done with violence? Why do you have to act like that? Why, you know? So I took that opening, that scene with him and Bodie and Wallace in the bottle as, I don't want you acting like that. I hate, you know, and don't fuck with Wallace like that. Like I took it as he doesn't care if Wallace is being a kid, if Wallace is playing with toys. I feel like he'd rather that than beating people up in the courtyard.
Yeah, I just think that Wallace is now a loyal soldier to D, and the scene with the money maybe reinforced that.
I just think because we didn't see anything, I don't know how it played out, and in my head, I almost don't know if I believed it necessarily.
What, that they got the money?
Yeah, how he got the money. We didn't see it, so I almost.
No, we didn't see it. Well, okay, so we can assume that Wallace is lying about that conversation because we heard the actual conversation, but we can also assume that they got the money because he says to him, "How'd you get D to give it to him?" And they're out there eating, so we know he got the money.
Right.
So,
I don't know. I just I don't know. I just didn't hold as much weight with that as much as I just thought that it was more of how much he trusted him. That he just said, D said, wait, we wait. I don't know.
I feel like it's all about the money because it just reinforces what Stringer was saying. I don't see any other reason for Wallace to be that loyal and that
because he's a nice kid.
Loyal is not the word. I'm sorry. Obedient is the word.
That's
obedient to D. And
that's the reason. Well, that was the point, I guess, is that I feel like Wallace is being painted different than Bodie. He's a nice kid. And so he is loyal. He's just loyal because he's a nice kid.
Okay.
That's how I took it more. But Stringer, Bird, and Weebay pull up to the Greek. They say, and this is where, man, it's so much more than I feel like they bargained for when, you know, they see that Weebay's got handcuffs. And then Stringer just says, this nigga's going to point him out to us. Meaning Wallace. Wallace is going to finger Brandon for them.
Yeah.
And that just feels like when he says that, like my heart starts racing. It's so much like anxiety of now you kind of actually have to be involved a little bit more than even just making the call. And then the next thing that we see basically is D'Angelo still waiting at his payphone, and he gets a phone call where he's told it's done. Nice work. And that's it. Hangs up. We see the call. I think it was 7 seconds on the computer. And that's it. Like you said, we saw the entire crime basically played out on the computer.
Yeah. So I like that ending. And they always end it so it's never the same. It's always different. I don't want to call it anticlimactic because that's not the word, but it's always like, it's never like your stereotypical cliffhanger. It's never shit, I got to tune in next week. It's always like, it leaves you thinking. I don't know. I love the way they end every episode so thus far, except for the one with Kima and the girlfriend. That one was.
Oh yeah, that was last one, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that was last week.
Who did you? So overall thoughts of the episode? Any questions? Any?
No questions per se. Overall thoughts is just it's still more. I see the pieces in motion. The law enforcement has a lot of ammunition now. As we established. So it's interesting how Omar will pivot or Avon will pivot. And then Omar, yes, I'm very interested in Omar, his plot, where he's going, what he's going to want to do. It sounds like both of his soldiers are taken out now. So
right.
He's going to want revenge or something. I don't know. So
the cheese stands alone.
Right. And like, that's the thing. He might be more dangerous by himself. I don't know, man. I'm really Omar there building him up. So I'm interested.
So last time we talked about who had the better episode. And I think we kind of we settled on the Streets had a better episode of the three between the Streets, Omar, and the police. We giving this one to the police?
Yeah, we gotta give it to the police because Omar lost 2 soldiers in one episode. So it can't be him. Even though I love how strategic he was against the police. Like he sunned them. So I mean he gets points for that, don't get me wrong. And
he did with style. He definitely had style.
And he also took out some of Avon's crew too. It's like he started episode taking out. So I'm not downplaying what Omar did this week, but he at the end of the day he lost 2 soldiers, so that hurts. So
and his boyfriend, it's his boyfriend at the same time.
It's an emotional loss on top of that, yeah. Mm-hmm. So he can't win. And the streets, man, their code was cracked. That's it. Their code was cracked. They know every number they're dialing, and they're working on a wire. So it's definitely the police won this week.
And Avon's already a little bit taxed mentally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Any predictions that you want to lay out? I
don't have any predictions at this point because I don't know where they're going. The only thing I could think of from my notes is that Prez may, and I'm just guessing here, but Prez may have won himself some good graces with this little break in the case. So I could see it getting back up to his dad-in-law or something, and maybe getting him out of the office. I don't know. Maybe. Who knows?
You have a top character for the episode?
It's got to be Prez, man. He broke the code. Prez, yeah. Who else did anything of note today? I mean, Omar's always the man, so I'm not even counting him. But yeah, it's Prez. Prez had the most significant contribution to the detail.
Awesome. Yeah, I like Prez. I like Prez in this one. Yeah, I might go Prez in this one too. I think it's a good one. And D'Angelo, that was good. D'Angelo had a lot in this episode, but
he did.
I don't know. I'm starting to, and I try not to. It's hard for me to not start to show like, you know, my true feelings about character. Yeah, my true feelings about character.
That's very clear. You're not a fan of D'Angelo, so I get that much. But I mean,
I feel like he's whining all the time.
I feel like he is. He's whiny. Yeah, he's very in his feelings a lot. So
yeah, I just feel like he's the guy.
My last name is Bodie. I'm concerned with Bodie. I don't know what's gonna happen with him. So even though I don't care for his attitude most of the time, he's a little like he's what they call a shitbird. He's the definition of a shitbird. But right now in the situation he's in, I kind of want him to escape again somehow. So
I love that you're picking up. You're still picking up the lingo. Yeah. Shipper. That's great. I just want to look and make sure that there was no other lingo terms that I forgot.
Prez called them a yo. Them yos.
Yeah, Project Yos.
Yeah. I'm assuming that's a racial kind of thing. I don't know.
Project Yos. I don't know. Yos in the project. Project Yos.
Black people say yo. That's
how I figured it too. No, I think that's about all.
Yeah, all right. There's only 2 hours. So, but yeah, man, great episode. What's the name of next week's? I didn't even look ahead because I didn't want to make the mistake of watching Nicole open again by accident. But
Season 1, Episode 6.
Yeah,
The Wire.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. Okay,
it's The Wire. So, all right. That'll be the next episode of First Watch Rewatch. All right, man. I'll talk to you next time.
All right.
Peace.